So now we will open it up for questions. Yes.
The artists group, like, I don't know, string quartet, we don't also need to be nonprofit and have all of those.
No, you don't have to.
Okay, it's just the.
Just the presenter.
Much of the information Walter was giving us was only for the nonprofit applicant, right? So the size of the budget, when you're talking about $200,000, that's the nonprofit entity. I did have a question to follow up on what you said, and that's the multiple applications. There was a screen that said multiple applications will not be accepted. Does that mean for the same project?
That was related to the program grant for organizations to get not-for-profit, or for general operating support.
That was what.
So
Okay,
those organizations can only do one. Artstour Live Music, unlimited number. We're gonna look at those, the order they come in until the funds are fully committed.
Terrific. So you could have a half dozen projects to a half different nonprofits, and they will take a look at all of them for you.
Different venues.
Different venues,
Doing the same
different partners.
concert that, you know.
Sure,
not
yeah, sure.
here.
Absolutely.
In fact, if you get a bunch of different venues doing the same concert, once you leave your house and we consider you on tour, then there's the block booking, extra 5% on every one of those.
Okay.
So,
Especially if you leave Chicago and go out downstate somewhere.
Yes.
Dunes number, that
Dunn's number.
Duns number.
Yeah.
Is that the same as a vendor number that, like, for
No,
example?
the vendor number, I think if you're speaking of, is with the Chicago Public
Yes.
Schools. No, Dunn's number is from Dun and Bradstreet.
and again, that's only for the applicant organization. If they're a 501c3, they probably already have their DUNS number. When they're hiring you, they will need to demonstrate that. If they don't have one, it's an online process. That's very simple.
And it's free. It's a pretty simple, free process to get one.
So don't worry too much about the DUNS number for you as an individual looking to get a contract. That goes back to the applicants, the presenter.
That goes back to talking about what we said, you know, find a library, a park district, a community center who wants to hire your services, present them with your program, they'll have all that information. It's their job to fill out the form, to have the DUNS number and show the budgetary numbers and all that stuff. You just need to have a really great product and somebody who believes in what you have to sell and wants to present you, and they'll carry the ball for you from there. It's all in the hands of the 501c3. As Bob Balkins pointed out, I know with my own business, I live and die with our database. Same thing he's saying. You know, it's that accumulation, excuse me, of names of people who are potential contacts that might buy your services. Because they may not buy it this year, but you touch them gently this year, and 2, 3, 4 years down the line, they might come back and say, you know what, I'm interested in that program now. Then you've got someone interested, then you direct them to the Arts Council saying, because you're a nonprofit, you could also perhaps apply for funding through this program. And it's, obviously, there's great value in accessing this program. If you have a program that's valued at $10,000 or $12,000, you can get between $600 and $7,500 for it from the Arts Council. And so there's no downside to this program. And just to simplify everything we're saying here, all you have to do is, as the musician, is have the program, have the product, and have somebody who wants to present you with their nonprofit. The heavy lifting is done on their end as far as the application and having all the various criteria in place.
Let me just say, it would be quite likely that you might be dealing with a presenter who's not very sophisticated. If it's a small town park district and they've never done something like this before, you're going to have to talk them through it and say, here's what you do. You go on this site, you look at it, and then you'll get your money. And if you have any questions, call me and I can tell you how it's done.
Good point.
Bigger series, you know, if you're talking about the Cranard Center, they know how to do this. Or even much smaller ones, in Schaumburg, they would know how to do it. Smaller ones, if it's your community park district or library, they may not know. So
And I would just add that the Illinois Arts Council agency staff are civil servants there to help. So if you're dealing with someone and they're confused, Joshua will answer the phone, Walter will answer the phone, and we will deal with them directly. It shouldn't be your responsibility to get the application filled out. It should be theirs, and that's what we're there for. We do that with everyone.
One thing you do have to have that I didn't mention, I'm sure you know this already, but when a presenter uses you, you need to have a contract. And they have to sign it, and you sign it, so hopefully that is something you need to do.
And then you file it with the union.
So if you're a composer, orchestrator, arranger, and you've got material you want to get out, how does that play into this whole thing? You know, let's say you compose this piece and, you know, but I can't get an orchestra together because I don't have the money to do it. but how does that whole thing work?
That, to me, would fit more under the individual artist support grant, where you could have that recording, you could have studio time for that recording, things of that nature, so that would be more at the end.
So even though it's live music, it doesn't necessarily mean strictly live music.
Well, this is another program outside of the live music program. That's why they came here to tell us about the other opportunities there at the Arts Council. And this is one of them, which is a great program. It supports individual artists for projects like you're describing right now. What's the funding mechanism for that? How much of that will you fund for an individual artist?
In that particular one, that would be
Right.
an artist project, so that's up to $3,000 request. We would fund up to 75% of the budget. You would have to have some cash from another source. So you could hire the musicians, you could set up the studio time, you could have duplication of those CDs made. That would all be under the individual artist.
But what if you wanted it to be part of a live performance? Because you can't go like between two.
You could, once you had a performance, once you had people who would play it, then you would find the presenter and do the Artstour angle of who's gonna hire these performers. I think that you as a composer would be a bit out of the loop by that point. So it may not be ideal. I have to be honest that this was a real bit of flexibility for us to get this program up and going. We had an Artstour program for beginning of time, very long time, that was suspended with hard budget times. So this live music funding that the CFM put together enabled us to be able to restore that program and expand it. We'd love to see it go even further. And the idea
So if you wanted to do it as a live performance,
you have to find the presenter.
You have to find the presenter.
Yeah.
But the presenter could very well, be interested in commissioning your work. That could be part of what you pitch them. I'm Phil Fio, I've got a 12-piece ensemble I'd like to write for. I'd like to create this piece based on these audio samples I'm going to show you. I'd like to present it live, I'd like to record it through that process, put it all together as one proposal, and they'll fund that portion that's missing, and the Arts Council will come over the rest.
Very good. You saw the way around
Now,
that.
Creative.
That's a collaboration, that would be a collaboration.
That would be a
Yeah,
collaboration.
collaboration.
that's a collaboration with the presenter
No.
or with the orchestra.
The ensemble and the composer get together, and they
The
find that
nonprofit
nonprofit.
ensemble.
So what's the Park District, I mean, what's in it for them? Well, what's in it for them, for example?
New music.
Well, but it's gonna be a recording studio, right?
No.
Or
It's gonna be
first performance and then you do a live? I mean, at what point will the library get involved if you just wanted to record something? Or you have to find the individual grant together with the live performance?
I think we found two solutions to his scenario.
Okay.
One solution was individual artist support, where we would be able to fund the recording and the presentation. The second solution was him taking an orchestra that had perhaps rehearsed his composition and finding a presenter that would present that orchestra performing it, perhaps recording that live performance. So there's actually two ways that we could get at that, but you can only do one or the other. You can't do both.
Of the two ways, can I just say this? Yeah, of the two ways, the one that has more money, obviously, is the Artstour one. That's $30,000 worth,
Absolutely.
right? Versus the 2,000 individual project.
If it's a lot.
Exactly.
Right, I mean, that's a huge difference, so it
Yeah.
probably makes sense for him to get the collaboration board.
Depends on, right.
Yeah, so back to the Artstour, if you're a working artist and you're working already with a library or a not-for-profit, and you're on the phone with them and they're saying, we're ready to sign this contract, where I'm confused is, and they've got a date for you, you're gonna say, well, hold on, how long are they gonna have to wait to find out if the money is coming?
This takes planning, this takes advanced
Right.
planning, clearly.
So if I wanna charge them $3,000, but I'm saying that
Can I-
half of it could be
Let me
covered.
interject for a second.
Sure.
What I've done over the years is when something like that, I would make a contract saying pending partial funding from the Arts Council.
Okay.
And that way if this doesn't happen, which I'm sure it will, then they have a way to get out of it. And if it does happen, everything's good.
Yeah, we've seen that in quite a few contracts already.
And keep it in mind, their job is to release these funds. They want to spend this money. They want to.
But how long does that process take? I'm saying, so if I'm talking to the person, I say, well, I can't say for sure, but how long is that gonna take?
We ask you to have the application into us at least 10 weeks. our staff is pretty committed to getting a final determination back to you within 6 weeks. Many times that can happen within 4 weeks. We have some protection measures in place when grant awards over a certain dollar amount, we have to have a higher level of authority. So for example, if it's more than $5,000, I actually have to go to the board and have the board sign off on that. So we can guarantee that you would know within 6 weeks though, if your project's going to be supported. So it does take some planning.
First Bob, then Joe, and then we have a question back here. Bob?
Okay, we're sitting at the CFM headquarters. We kind of cross paths with the SAG members and variety artists, this or that. So when we come to collaboration, we find the venue, we get the funding. When does or doesn't a union contract come into play, and the involvement of different disciplines of performers come out of the same budget? Do they each have their own budget? Let's say a dance company wants to work with a musician, and the musician is union, they say, we've got non-union musician. I mean, where do we collaborate and when don't we, and where is there a contract?
That's a good question that I can answer. Of course, we would love to have every single one of these contracts that you sign be a union contract. That's what we're here for. However, if you're working with a dance company or a theater company, because you referred to SAG-AFTRA, let's call it a theater company, and you've got 4 musicians and you're collaborating together into this performance, you together decide what your fee is going to be. Then you go to the presenter buys your services for X amount of dollars. You get a check after they get funding from the Arts Council for the total amount of the job. At that point then, the money would be divided between all of the parties present. If the musicians are union musicians and you wanted to fill out a union contract, which is what we would love you to do, then you have a separate contract that you fill out with the union for the 4 musicians for the engagement. And then that would afford you the right to be able to contribute to your pension.
So you'd only be responsible for the musicians on the day, not the actors and the actors. That's between them and their guys. It's, our deal is with you and our musicians and our members.
Yeah.
We would expect you to be responsible just like any gig. Just for the number of musicians that are on the date, we'd expect to see a contract for that many musicians, just like it was any other gig. So that's what we're
It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, we know some students who play really well, and they'd love to sit in or be part of the performance and, all that kind of stuff, and it gets kind of gray.
Right, the one thing we have to be careful of though is this is not limited to just union musicians, okay? The union really doesn't have any authority to be able to say that all of those people that are performing are union musicians. Although we know that our union musicians are the best musicians. Right? Joe.
My question is about, for something on a smaller scale like Artstour or live music, and you might be dealing with a smaller organization, nonprofit. How long, and you may have said this, but I just want to clarify, how long is it going to take for them to actually get their money?
Oh, that's such a good question. The state of Illinois has issues getting funds out. And so we encourage you in your contract to make sure you include some language around when payment should be made or partial payment, that sort of thing. When the grant paperwork is back in our office and everything is signed, assuming that the presenter doesn't have anything standing with us from previous years, it can take the comptroller a minimum of 2 months and up to 6 months for payment to be issued. There's a lot of factors that come into play there. We've noticed in our tracking of the way our grants are paid, grants of less than $1,000 tend to get paid a little faster. The big grants tend to wait a little longer. But that's kind of the general expectation is that.
But they obviously going to receive approval in advance of the performance, so they know the money's been approved, and then it's just a matter of waiting.
It's just a matter of waiting.
And the same thing for the musicians.
Exactly, and keep in mind, what I encourage people to do is remember that this grant requires a cash match. They're required to have cash on hand to pay a part of that, and our grant is the other part. I would encourage your contract to ask for that cash match payment sooner, and if you're willing to work with them, wait on the other payment until they arrive.
How do the musicians get paid?
You get paid from the presenter, and then we're talking just about Artstour Live Music. So with the Artstour Live Music, the presenter pays you because they're the applicant of the funds. Our funds for that type of program can only go to those not-for-profit organizations. If it's the individual artist program, which is the other program to support your careers, those payments go right to you.
But here's what I would do if I were you. As an entrepreneur, what I would do is if you're working for the village or the township of Evanston, they want to buy an ensemble, it's $5,000. And the Arts Council is going to send them ultimately $3,500, and Evanston has come up with $1,500. You put a contract together with the Village of Evanston saying, you owe me $5,000. And what I'm asking you, Village of Evanston, is to please pay this within 30 days after the performance, regardless of when you get your funding. Ask them to float what's being held as opposed to you waiting for them. It's no different than a band leader. You know, if I get paid or I don't get paid, my musicians get paid every 2 weeks, period. They get their money, and they, you know, whether I've gotten paid or if I've never gotten paid, it's not, you don't have that skin in the game. So I would go to the nonprofit and make it clear to them that, you know, the sum total of the amount of the contract is X. I need full payment by this date. While you and make it the nonprofit's responsibility, and then they're usually pretty cash full, and they have dollars that they can allocate and wait for their funding. A lot easier than the musicians can wait for the funding to be paid.
If I might interject one thing here, going back to the glory days of the Artstour program, they were really good about getting the money out prior to the concert. They were very good. And now the old program doesn't exist anymore, but I would imagine as things get rolling, it would probably be somewhat comparable to that.
Yeah, and the changes is more the conditions that are present in the state than the program itself. You know, if you apply well in advance, you know, if you apply in March for a program that's not happening until December, that actually gives us a lot more time to get the money there. The money could actually be there for the program.
You're budgeting for it, they're doing what they need to do, so, you know, they're participating.
I'm sorry, is the 2 to 6 months, is that starting from when you receive when you get the okay, or is it's not from the date of the actual performance?
No, it's 2 to 6 months from when all of the paperwork to claim the award is back.
Just how firm do you have to be with dates? I've had circumstances in the past with the group where we're doing library concerts and something might get postponed for a month. Would that cause a cancellation of the whole thing?
Yeah, we do like to know when the venue, the time, and the date.
Right.
Now, sometimes you can say to be determined, but you know as soon as you can, so.
Well, say you set a date, but then later on there some circumstance come up. Our singer, for example, got very ill, and so we had to postpone for like a couple of months one time. And so
I think the Arts Council's general policy is once we've awarded a project based on the quality of the project, we're committed to the project.
Right.
We can generally accommodate change of dates
Right.
as long as it falls within our program year.
Okay.
The state has limitations of when funds can no longer be spent.
that
So
answers the question.
Yeah, because you can rain out anything.
Performance has to be this year
Yes,
for either the individual or the other.
for this particular chunk of money,
Oh,
it's from now until December 31st, 2014. We are looking forward to 2015, and Rich will speak about that in a bit, but yeah, it's just for something that's going to happen now. And you may be starting with the groundwork now for something that is going to happen in 2015, but we don't anticipate that this is going to change.
Let me talk to that though. Most engagements that I have always booked, let's say for the fall of 2014, most of them are booked in January. Second most is February, third most is March. So there's plenty of time if you're gonna get some bookings, there's time to do that. And of course, you know, the summer is its own whole thing, and most of those are booked later, even later still. So I think there's time and again, if it happens to fall in the spring of 15, well, then you have to be hopeful that the money will be there.
well, and just to clarify too, the state of Illinois, like I was saying, they have limits on when we can spend money from a fiscal year, and at a certain point, the state is done with that budget, everything's figured out in the next one. This is really fortunate, this particular year. Generally, we have grants we start accepting July 1st, we accept, and things only go until the end of August. We've been able to extend these funds through December. Right now, we say we're taking applications until June. So you have until June to apply for things that happen through the end of the calendar year. Beginning in July, we'll start taking applications for FY15. So, you know, if you can't make that June 1st deadline, you wait a month, and then you can start applying for things that'll start happening that fall. So there's actually overlap this year that's never happened before. So we have good faith that the General Assembly is going to find favor in this program and it will continue. So you should be able to plan through. It's really that June 1st kind of deadline to ask for the FY14 funds that you need to keep in mind. If you can't make that, wait a month and it should be moving again.
Okay. Yeah. A couple of questions. I'm assuming that with the individual artists support, that would apply also to a small ensemble or group that is applying as an artist. Like, is that?
Individual artist support is not for an ensemble or an organization. It's for one individual artist.
Okay.
You only, no one else. Unless you can collaborate with another artist, it may be two projects, a project that you share together or wrote together.
So if an individual ensemble wanted to do a recording project or something like that, there would be no place for them. It would just be one artist.
No. Individual artist is for one artist,
Right.
not an ensemble.
So where do ensembles go if they want funding or support for a project for their ensemble and they're not collaborating with a nonprofit?
Usually ensembles are the ones that are not for profit and come to us for the program grant for ensemble.
Okay.
But most of our ensembles are not nonprofit, as you know.
Right.
It probably is not. That's why I would recommend find a nonprofit partner and do a live performance and add a recording component to what you want to do and put that proposal together that has both aspects to it. And that way you can apply for funding that has part for the recording, part for the live program. You know, your local park district can present whatever you've recorded live as well, provided it's not something that can't be replicated live, as some recordings are. But there's ways to think through it.
And when we're dealing with waiting, like a 2 to 6 month wait for the funds to come in, is there any deadline on when, do we have to say in the application when that, like, let's say we're talking about a recording project. Obviously, for most of us, we wouldn't be able to do that recording until the funds were in. So is that something that we can make that the date of that project dependent on when that fund arrives?
Well, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, what I would suggest to you is to just apply as soon as possible and with the understanding that you're having a late recording. So try to take into consideration that 2 to 6 month period so that you can get the funds prior to when the recording happens. But unfortunately with the individual artist program, you know, with the state in the situation that it is in, we try to tell those individual artists, please be aware that you may need to spend these funds out of pocket and then be reimbursed. So if you don't have the ability to do that, this may not be the year for you to apply for the individual artist program. Unfortunately, that's just the situation we're in.
Okay. But an individual artist would be able to apply for funding for a project that would include other artists.
Yes, yeah, and I can talk to you personally after this if you want to talk about what you're thinking.
Great, thank you.
But also, let's make sure we keep our eye on the ball here. And we're talking about live music programs primarily. The recording aspect is great. We're musicians, everybody wants to have their thing recorded, but it's about live music programs that can be presented in communities and nonprofits in that setting. The recording element is kind of a back door that we're kind of offering here, but it's not what's driving the funding.
Back here?
When it comes to the IACA determining whether or not to fund or to award a proposal, I think you had mentioned prioritizing from the presenter, so if they put in multiple applications, they have to be cleared out. One presenter in one city, you get 5 applications from them, then there needs to be a clear ranking of what is most important to them. Right. What, does it matter to you at all if the IACA is receiving, let's say, applications from presenters in 10 totally different places, all for performances by the same ensemble?
It'd be wonderful. At least you're getting work. That's great.
What's that?
It's wonderful. You're getting work. That's great.
Okay,
sure.
so that doesn't affect your...
No problem.
It's about the presenter's priorities for how many applications there.
We have one artist that is a storyteller, does folk music. And he's already submitted 3 applications from 3 different organizations that wants to use him. Small grant though, nothing big.
Yes, I was just, go back a little bit. You said that if somebody in the group worked in a school or library, would you not be able to apply? Is that correct? If someone in the group that you're trying to get a copy for the live artist performing,
For that specific
would
organization.
you not be able to get a contract if one of those musicians worked at the school?
If any of the performers that we would consider artists are already on staff at the presenting organization or under contract, then no, that would be a conflict, and we wouldn't be able to.
Yes. So just to piggyback on that, if the person worked in the system, like Chicago Public Schools, that's a system, but not maybe in the school, and how does that work?
I mean, if somebody works like as a maintenance person or an engineer and wanted to also work as a performing artist?
No. Let's say the person works for Chicago Public Schools, but they work in a whole different area.
That's what I'm saying. If they-
But another school that they don't work in would take them in because they know they play. Can you do that?
You still apply.
I think so. Why don't you give me more of the details and I'll look into our rules, but yeah.
The person that I'm thinking of is in my band, and he works as a band director in one of the Chicago Public Schools. Does that mean I can't apply to any of the Chicago Public Schools?
So I'm gonna give both of you my card before I leave. And we'll clarify with Terry what that means. But I believe that working within the system of the district would probably allow you to still be a part of a project. Is that your sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
not if you're homeschooled.
Or kind of, yeah, you could be at your home school, but at another school that seems kind of okay, but we're gonna run that by everyone and make sure we're all in agreement.
And we're still learning as we go for this year, so.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Yes.
It's something that I don't think we've talked about. I'm looking at the individual artist support thing and the artist project, and the one sentence that struck me here says, applicants must secure a cash match to cover the remaining costs. And where the available sources for that? Is that personal cash that you gotta come up with?
Personal cash or other
So there just has to be-
sources, as long as it's not state of Illinois.
You can actually apply for, because the city has a pretty similar individual artist program to ours. So you could apply to the city for a portion of the project and apply to us for a portion of the project. Just can't be, everything can't be from the state, is what we're saying. Or it could be personal savings.
Okay, all right, and that's all in whatever the application program is, that's all covered in there, and that gets detailed like that? Great, thanks.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
What if it's non-performing? Did you say workshops? Did you mention something about, what if it was something music related, but more of a like a workshop or an educational kind of thing? Does it apply to that too?
It's a workshop that you wanted to.
Something music related, maybe I'm really good at finale, whatever, I'm teaching finale in a school situation.
Oh, well, that's a completely different program.
Yeah, that's a program we didn't even come to talk about, but, we have a lot of
Because
programs.
I've done some of those at schools. And
We have one grant program, Quick Start is the words that you want to jot down. That's on our website, and Quick Start, the applicant is a school. The school finds an individual artist to come in and do hands-on learning with a group of students. So with the Quick Start, we can support a minimum of 5 contact hours, up to 30 contact hours, but it needs to be with a core group of students. Because we're a state agency, as is the Illinois State Board of Education, we're very careful about what we fund in schools, because it's the Board of Education's duty to make sure they have a well-rounded curricula. So the way that we balance it is making sure that we're just dealing with a special population within those projects. But the Quick Start is the one you can look at. That will soon be expanding to also include community organizations. So when you sign up at our website and you start to get emails from us, which there's not a lot, we basically just let you know when something is due or when something has been released. But that would be the way to do that. Again, the school would be requesting your support.
Any other questions? Okay, before we wrap it up here, I would like to also tell you that we do have the Music in the Schools program. It's very active here at the CFM. The CFM pays 50% for any educational program from an ensemble, from a soloist up to 6 people that go into a school within our jurisdiction, which is the whole northern part of the state of Illinois. It can be any school, kindergarten, even preschool, all the way up through high school. And it can be parochial public school. It doesn't have to be Chicago public schools. What you need to do is fill out an application. All the information on music in the schools is on our website. Fill out an application with some supporting material. Once a week we have a board meeting. The board approves any application that comes in. We put you up on our website as an approved artist for the Music in the Schools program. And then all you need to do is partner with the school. I know Phil's done quite a few of those, where you go into the school and you have them write a check for 50%, send the check to us, and we do the payroll, which includes a pension payment for you. And yes.
Does everyone have to be a union member for that?
Because we are using union funds, we do require them to be union members.
Okay, for a classical singer, for example.
Singers are fine.
Singers are
I didn't say singers weren't musicians.
That reminds me of my first day at Eastman School of Music. On the first day of school, the dean got up and he said, "Is there any singers in here?" And we got up and he said, "Welcome, all you musicians and singers."
One other program I want to remind you of also, even though we've talked about them not having money, the Music Performance Trust Fund does have funds available. It's a limited amount of funds. It's only a 25% funding. Once again, if you need the application, you can contact me, you can contact Gwen Redmond here at the union. They have to fill out a form and send that in. We have to send everything into New York, and then New York lets us know whether or not they'll fund it. But they are funding at our regular wage scales and not at the community service scales. So that's another opportunity for you. Greg?
To make things complicated, hypothetically, is it possible to nest the Music in the Schools program with the Artstour?
I don't see any way that we could do that, because we get the funding from the school, we write the checks out for the Music in the Schools program. They have a completely different way in doing their funding, in that they send the check once it's approved to the presenter who pays you in full.
Okay, then modify my question to the Music in the Schools. Can it be nested with the individual artist program of the IAC?
I think so, because the individual artist program would be expenses related to furthering your career. Maybe I'm not understanding the Music in the Schools program well enough.
I guess the way I might be able to see it go together is if you got an individual grant through the Arts Council to develop an educational program for a school performance. So you've got the money where you're rehearsing, you're putting together whatever program you have. I don't know if you're doing multimedia or whatever.
Okay.
And that would be paid for through the Arts Council. And then once that's established, you do the application for the Music in the Schools, and then we would put it up on our website, and then you could sell it.
Thank you.
Any other ideas? Before we leave, Rich has got a few final comments to say. I thank everybody for being here and experiencing this exciting part of our